Welcome to the Roastery at Press Coffee. My name is Andrew. This is Bulat. Today we're going to be showing you our allocation coffee and a little bit of what makes it so special. Before we do that, I do want you to meet the man himself who roasted this great coffee. Bulat, what do you do here? What brings you to Press? Tell me about it.
Certainly, yeah. My name is Bulat. I'm a head roaster for Press Coffee, and my job is basically picking some best coffees in the world, roast them, and give it to our baristas so they can give it to you.
Now, every day at Press, you can come in and try one of our brew bar coffees, right? Which is 5 to 8, depending on what's the best at that time. And that's already pretty special. And customers can come in and get that brewed as a Chemex, and they have so many options. What's different about allocation? What is that?
Well, 4 times a year, we just go ahead and basically remove any limitations, and just there's no rules in buying the coffee. Like there's no price set. The only concern when we buy allocation is to make sure it's the best of the best and it tastes unique. So it's just how it goes.
Wow. So if specialty coffee is coffee that scores 80 points or higher for this green coffee right here from the farm, allocation, what is our scores for that usually?
Yeah, certainly. The one that we had before was from the company, actually 90 plus, which they don't sell any coffee less than 90 points. So I would say this one would probably be there at 90, 91 too, if we scored ourselves. We haven't yet so, but right when we're gonna roast it on our big roaster and release the coffee, we will make sure we'll score it right away.
Nice. Oh, so excited. So these coffees for allocation, we're selecting from only the best we can get our hands on, no limitations, cost is not a factor, and this is where we ended up, this particular coffee.
Yeah, we had 4 allocations before, we had different experiments. This one specifically picked high eyes because it's from Ethiopia, and a lot of people in Press here that enjoy specialty coffee actually start enjoying a specialty coffee from drinking Ethiopia. So it's a really nice little way of appreciating our origins.
Yeah, no, I agree. And a lot of our Ethiopians, whether it's a full natural or a washed or anywhere in between, really bring in those fruit components, right? Being that this is an Ethiopian, being that it's a 90 plus point Ethiopian, what kind of fruit are we talking here?
Just by itself, coffee comes from the fruit. I love to remind that all the time. It comes from the plant, it's a tree, and there is seeds inside of that fruit that you see right here is our coffee beans we call them. But here's the thing, how do we get those seeds out of the fruit? There is different processes involved, like wash, naturals, and we can talk about them, but this one right here specifically is cool because it comes from Testi Isla, and that's one of the most known farms in Ethiopia for their fermentation practices. So we know it's going to be something outstanding, something the best. The amount of work they put into that is incredible. There's extra people on all the supply chains too, to make sure that happens the way it is, to the perfection. So yeah.
I love to hear that. And there's so much you can learn just from looking at green coffee. So I'm looking at this right now. You can tell it's got some of those kind of brownish seeds, which are indicative, can be of a natural fermentation or somewhere in between. The sorting size looks really nice. Personally, I'm a big fan of aroma on green coffee.
Yeah.
If you'll excuse me, this is
right.
Very good. Very fruity, very floral.
And it comes in a brick. So it actually, they take all the oxygen away from the back and they just send us like basically a brick of coffee.
Yeah.
And it has no oxygen inside of it, so they vacuum sealed it for us.
That's amazing. Is that considered anaerobic?
That is a Bombay. It is an anaerobic, but they also do a Bombay vine process, which they call it winey process because those are the same techniques as they use in working with wine when they make wine with grapes. Same technique, and I'm so glad that you mentioned it too, that the colors and stuff in this coffee looks a little bit all over the board because in order to make that consistent, they have to move the bag from the direct sunlight for over 6-7 days throughout the day. So imagine that coffee being in the big bags, and they have to move it from sunlight just so the sunlight doesn't create that inconsistency. So it's just part of the process.
Yeah.
And also anaerobic, for those who are listening to that, means that there was no oxygen used in that process. They removed the oxygen. They use expensive tanks for that reason. That's why it also increases the value for the product, the price, and what that does to coffee basically develops the coffee has a lot of chemicals inside of it, non-volatile, volatile, and acidic, and it basically makes them play a role and make the sugar a little bit, develop the sugar better, which shows up in a cup so significantly. Coffee tastes so sweet, so delicious, and full of fruits.
I love to hear that. So this green coffee is very impressive. What I'm excited about is tasting the final product, which is roasted and brewed. So do you have any roasted that we could try today?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Amazing. So go ahead and bring it out if you don't mind. And while you're doing that, I wanted to mention too, we talk about fruit in Ethiopian coffees. And so the famously full natural Ethiopians that have the big strawberry and the big blueberry, a lot of folks don't understand how we get to those points, So whereas a washed coffee may be more muted and it may taste honey and tea-like, a lot of the full natural coffees have these really pronounced fruit notes. The big reason for that is they pick the coffee cherries when they're ripe, of course, and then they leave the seeds inside of that fruit for 2 to 3 weeks. It sits on these raised beds in the sun and it dries that way, and it looks almost like a shriveled up raisin by the time it's done. So the coffee seed the whole time is absorbing all of the sugars and all of the stuff, the good stuff from that coffee cherry. When it's done after 3 weeks, they strip the dried fruit off, and this is what you're left with, basically, is a fruit bomb. If you like Napa cabs, if you're big into fruit bomb wines, full natural Ethiopians are your coffee. This one, more so. What are our tasting notes going to be on this? Tell me.
So far, I got watermelon candy, grapefruit, and really nice milk chocolate. It has to be, but that certainly is great milk chocolate. As with the sugar feedback to it, you really feel like someone put sugar in your cup of coffee. But no, it's just how organically it is.
Now, this one also has another flavor profile that I would crawl on my hands and knees to get, and that's bubblegum.
Same here.
Which is such a weird flavor when you talk about coffee and you think bubblegum, no way. When you get it done this way and you get the full natural version from Ethiopia, the bubblegum is more of a fruit. It complements the watermelon so well in this. I can't wait to try it. Customers will be able to buy this very soon. Today we're going to be brewing this on the Chemex, just like our brew bar coffees in stores. This will demonstrate its abilities in just about any method you would choose at home. We really like pour overs here because it cleans things up a little bit for us. But I'll let you get started, Bulat, and don't let me get in your way here.
Let's go.
Perfect. So while Bulat's doing that, I'll talk a little bit about our coffee program here at Press. So we're a specialty coffee roaster, and a lot of folks don't know what that means. So a specialty coffee roaster is someone who only deals in specialty grade coffees. And really all that means is green coffee like this that scores 80 points or higher from the farm. So if it hits that 80-point threshold and it's out of 100, if it hits 80 points or above, specialty grade coffee. We're a specialty coffee roaster, so we only roast specialty grade coffees. Now, allocation is very significant because that 80-point threshold, which is very relevant in all the coffees we buy, all of a sudden becomes irrelevant. And in this case, what would you score this at? What would you guess?
I would give it absolutely 89 or 90 high scores. Even personally myself, I only had 7 coffees 90 plus above. So it's really hard to get the coffee that scores that high, but that is still such a high score and super hard to find. So yeah, even like when we talk 90, it's a big compliment for a coffee.
Certainly. And those big numbers, those 90-plus point coffees, those are usually associated, especially the last decade or so, with Panamanian geishas. You see that a lot, and as soon as that number is hit, that price goes through the roof, right? So one of the things we did with our allocation is we wanted it to be accessible to everybody that wanted to try it. So we offer it in a 6-ounce tin. It's going to come in one of these really nice little package tins. It's a handmade product packaged just for you when you order it. And with this, it is available to our subscribers first. They do get first dibs. If there's any left over, we then release it to the general public on our website, and they can purchase it there as well. Highly recommend everybody grab one of these while they can. So let's get it started, Bulat. I cannot wait to try this coffee. How many grams are you putting in there?
32.
32 grams. Yeah. I love it.
Classical recipe.
If you're doing this at home, you will have to dial in that grind size just a little bit. If your coffee comes out under extracted, obviously it needs to be a little bit tighter or finer of a grind. If it's way over extracted and too strong, clearly you want to coarsen that grind up a little bit. There's too much coffee in that water. So First off, what's our first step here when we're making a Chemex? Bulat, what do we do?
I filtered the paper, and that helps me to heat up the chamber and kind of get rid of that paper taste. And now I put the coffee on the top, and I'm gonna introduce the water. And when I'm gonna do that, coffee is gonna kind of freak out. That's basically when CO2 starts to release. We call this process bloom, pre-wetting. There's so many different words for that. But what happens is just CO2 is getting released, and right after coffee is sat with water and that chemical reaction started, we're gonna introduce more water, and start brewing it to the balance.
Well, show me that bloom. How does that bloom look?
Yeah, let's go.
And we're starting this with how many grams of water?
We're gonna go 50 grams
50
of water.
gram bloom for you, perfect. There's a lot of intricacies and a lot of variables in play. Some folks brew a Chemex with a 75 gram bloom, some with a 50, some with 100, and there is no right or wrong. The right or wrong is, what's your favorite cup of coffee? That's the right answer. What are some of the benefits of, say, a Chemex versus a Kalita? What are some of the benefits of using this device here?
Yeah, so Chemex is unique by itself because it has only one hole here and it has a filter in it too. So coffee has time to sit on the top with water for a little bit longer time. For that purposes, we grind our coffee more coarser. So the coffee, while sitting on the top with water, has a chance to extract the most out of it and filter through this paper filter and end up in our chamber. And while it does so, we get the most clear cup of coffee, the most clarity shows up, much more intense, the acidity is more easier to evaluate. While we're talking about Kalita, there's 3 holes in there, and even we grind coffee more fine, it's gonna be more of that boldiness, more of that body comes through. Some people love, I love, you love your cup of coffee, I like my cup of coffee. We all have our own preferences, so yeah.
That's right, and that's one of the things we say in specialty coffee a lot is, I don't care if you only drink Press Coffee for the rest of your life and only come to me, because there's so many great offerings. And the way that we would roast this coffee, something this good, no other roaster could do it the same. And it might be different for a different reason, but I'm so proud when we can bring these coffees in and show them off like this. Now the Chemex, you mentioned that thicker filter, so it cleans up, you have a lighter bodied coffee, which is really good in these cases because it can allow us to better taste those fruit notes, right? There's not a lot of that silty, sooty texture that you get in a French press oftentimes.
Certainly, yeah, no, just knowing that there's a filter compared to French press for full immersion. You know, coffee has a lot of chemicals in it, volatile and acids, and that just helps really to focus just on how the acid works inside of the coffee and how they play together. Yeah.
Lovely. Now you mentioned acids, and acids are one of my favorite parts of coffee. So at this point, if we went from the green to the roasted side, we notice a big difference in a lot of things visually, but also aroma. Mm-hmm. And so the aromas that we associate with coffee typically come out of the roasting process in the form of chlorogenic acids being created. And so you're now dealing with malic acid and acetic acid and all of these things that come together to create that coffee aroma that is just absolutely amazing. And as a roaster, you're like a professional chef that has the ability to customize and apply an artistic license to a product this good.
Yeah, and one thing that specifically makes this allocation so unique too is the process. The process they use to get the coffee seeds out of the fruit, which they sort a lot to make sure that only best ripen cherry stays, and the rest basically that's been damaged is not really used in that process. And after that, they use an anaerobic fermentation winey process that actually helps us to bring more the winey-like volatile compounds that make our cup overall sweet and reminds us more of that little bit of red hint of wine too in the cup, which in this case, that red wine with the texture it provides kind of reminds me of watermelon candy with the sweetness all combined together. So when I say watermelon too, you don't pick up watermelon, don't necessarily think you don't taste it. It's really like seeing those red fruits, seeing that sugar, seeing those acids, and combine them together. And more you're gonna drink coffee, more and more you're gonna pick up on those right away.
Yeah. So when we talk about tasting notes, and it's a really cool thing because it allows you to communicate with your customer what they can expect to taste out of a coffee and whether or not that coffee is going to be right for them before they buy it. So I know if I see strawberry, watermelon candy, bubblegum, these are coffees that are going to sing to me. But if I see something like tobacco, graphite, shoe leather, these are notes that are more traditional but not necessarily my favorites, right? Mm-hmm. And in this case, so we've narrowed it down, we've said watermelon, bubblegum, and grapefruit.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
All right, I cannot wait to taste these flavors, Bulat. I'm so excited.
Also taste vanilla in there, melon. There is literally the spectrum of fruits in this cup is over the board. More and more you drink and more it cools down, you can see how crazy it can get. But certainly something that stays throughout the cup is watermelon, bubblegum, and grapefruit. So yeah, and when I say grapefruit too, I like, coffee has bitterness in it. And,
of course.
It could be unpleasant. In our case, it's really pleasant because grapefruit is a sweet fruit and it has that bitterness in it that we know too, but it shows up in a cup too.
Of course,
Yeah.
I love it. We mentioned the processing, so this is a particularly special coffee because of the processing. And when we say processing, we just mean how do you get these seeds out of the fruit?
Yep.
Right? How do you process that? So in this case, our coffee was picked ripe, of course, set on raised beds, the whole fruit together, 3 weeks. It sat there and fermented in the sun while these groups of very passionate growers came by and stir that coffee up constantly. After that 3-week period, they extract the seeds. These have absorbed all that sugar and all that wonderful stuff from the coffee. It's undergone a fermentation. It's dried, and in this case, anaerobically, correct?
Yeah, no
So,
oxygen.
Opposite of 1980s mom going to aerobic studio, anaerobic,
Yep.
clean, concise. Let's try it, Bulat. I'm very excited.
And when you make an aerobic process, temperature is one of the biggest factor, and for that purposes, they literally move the bags around the plantation, around the farm.
Sure.
Just to make sure that the sun doesn't directly screws the temperature inside of the bag when the coffee is being fermented.
Love that. Is it safe to say that about 90% of the blood, sweat, and tears and labor has gone into this coffee before we've roasted it?
Certainly, and this is the best part about drinking specialty coffee and supporting specialty coffee shops, because then you know that you are paying that full supply chain all the way to the farmer. The money goes to the roasters, to the barista, to the importers, to the people that process the coffee, to the people that harvested the coffee. So everyone gets paid evenly. That's the goal. That's the ideal structure. It's what we all trying to get out of it. But yeah,
Beautiful, beautiful.
please.
All right, so we've got our cups here. This is our allocation, Ethiopian, anaerobic processed. Cheers, sir.
Cheers, Andrew. Wow.
The texture is incredible in that coffee. And I get kind of down the center of my tongue, the bulat, the bubble gum, the watermelon notes, very apparent. Really fruit-forward coffee.
And with anaerobic fermentation, it's such a big risk for the farmer because when they do that, they have to dedicate a certain crop of the coffee to that process. And you never know, will it be successful? Will it be not? Will the roaster like that or not? So they can honestly just waste that coffee, and this is their money, this is their product. And what we taste here is done really well because sometimes, you get those anaerobic fermentations and different fermentations that are so funky to the point where you're just like, am I drinking even coffee? But for this one, you specifically get that classical, delicious milk chocolate sweet body with those intensity of, as you said, texture that reminds me of the watermelon in terms of the red fruit and melon and grapefruit and all of that combined together into this one unique cup of coffee.
I absolutely love it. Bulat, how much of this coffee do we have?
We got 2 30-kilo bags, so we have 60 kilos in the house. There was only 5 bags available when that coffee got released.
Wow.
So we were able to get 2 of those bags, which was really nice.
So 40% of the entire crop
Yeah,
we own.
a very micro lot that they dedicated. And also Teste Isla from Sidama are known for one of the best fermentation practices in the world. And you can see that in the cup because it's not over the board. It's very balanced. It's very clean. It's very round. And all of that just makes a really delicious cup of coffee.
I couldn't agree more. Bulat, thank you so much for
Thank you,
spending
Andrew.
so much time and effort in making our coffee program what it is. Folks at home, I hope you get a chance to try our upcoming allocation, the anaerobic processed Ethiopian. Find out what bubblegum tastes like in coffee, and we hope to see you at Press very soon. Thank you for joining us today.
Cheers.